Well, thank you so much for staying with us here on Morning Live. And the Matric results are pretty much center of our focus this morning. The 2018 Matric results have been released, and we are going to, as we had promised earlier, be crossing to various SABC Journalist stations across the country. And we're going to start, of course, in the Eastern Cape, where our reporter Iviwe Poti finds herself in the northern suburbs of Port Elizabeth. And she is, as I understand, at Boysons Park Secondary School. So let's cross over to Iviwe. Iviwe, good morning. You know, just looking at some of the messages coming through on the social media platforms, many people saying that the real story this morning and the province that we really ought to be celebrating is the Eastern Cape, and the minister reiterating that this morning, saying this is the province that she is proudest of. But do give us a sense of how at least the school that you are at performed, and also the other schools in that region.
Well, definitely, I think for the Eastern Cape as a whole, everyone should be in a celebratory mood. You'll remember that it's been 7 years that the Eastern Cape has had the dubious honor of being the least performing province. At least this year, there's a massive improvement of over 5%, and finally reaching just above 70% in terms of a pass rate for the whole province. You'll remember that I think in 2014, 2015, they had a massive drop of about 8.5% in their matric results, and post that the former MEC who passed away last year, Mandla Makupula, had said that they'd work on a 3-year plan, which was, I think, about 2016. And since then, we've seen slight improvements year after year. Last year, I know the improvement was about 2.5%, and this year we're looking at an improvement of over 5%. So in terms of the province working towards ensuring that, you know, they're bringing quality education to their matrics and throughout high school, using various programs such as holiday camps, additional work, past examination papers, also getting university students in to come and help students. I think it has worked out for the Eastern Cape. And you'll remember that when we also look at the provinces that have contributed the most in terms of distinctions, the Eastern Cape is one of those provinces, having about 16,000 distinctions. And also looking at the fact that I think most important is the fact that no-fee schools are the most contributing when we speak about distinctions. I think the minister said yesterday that for every distinction that a fee-paying school had, the no-fee schools in the Eastern Cape had about 2. So that shows you that, you know, it also means that they looked very clearly and tried to help those schools that are no-fee schools, looking at the Eastern Cape being a very rural area as well. But at the school that we are right now, we do know that the principal is down at the district office to go and pick up, you know, those matric results, and he has said that, you know, students will come around about 9 o'clock, and he'll give us a clear indication in terms of how the school has done. The reason why we also came to the northern areas is because this is an area that has been riddled by gang violence. So, you know, in terms of studying conditions, coming to school, avoiding all those societal ills, we are keen to hear how these students helped prepare themselves for the examinations this year. But as you've said, you know, I think for the Eastern Cape this year, they have a lot to celebrate.
Indeed, Iviwe, and of course also we have the situation with gangsterism and drugs in the northern areas. And do you think that, you know, this also played a great role in terms of the ultimate results that we saw there, because there were quite a few disruptions throughout the year?
There were quite a few disruptions, and I think some of the challenges throughout the year that the SABC were covering were the fact that, you know, drugs were actually infiltrating throughout schools. And you'll imagine that it should be high schools where, you know, students are now falling into the system of dropping out. A lot of people have also mentioned the fact that when you look back at 2007 and you look at the numbers of the grade 1 pupils that we had then and you compare it to the number of matrics that we have, it's kind of worrying in terms of what happened to a number of students that we can't account for, that we don't know, you know, did they go to FET colleges, did they just fall out of the system? And when we also look at the gangs in the northern areas, it's young lives that have been lost, on the streets as well. So the principals also throughout the year and SGBs, you know, were trying to take a firm stance against drug-related abuse and as well as gang violence, saying that they're losing their children to these gangs. So I think just in terms of a clear indication in terms of how they had to prepare, and what the year was actually like. It's only fair to give the matrics a better platform to tell us what are some of those challenges that they had been facing throughout the year. But as I said, they will come through round about 9 o'clock, Sakina, and we'll speak to them about those issues.
Certainly looking forward to hearing from them. But just another quick one. Minister Angie Motshekga, earlier on speaking here on Morning Live, was talking about the rural schools and the fact that, you know, resources were being stretched and depleted because you have rural schools where sometimes you have one principal to 15 children to 50 children, and one has to juxtapose that to the constitutional provisions that every child has a right to education. But what sort of sense are you getting in the province with regard to addressing that problem in order to further improve the matric pass rate in the Eastern Cape?
You know, Sakina, when you look at the Eastern Cape as a whole, as you've mentioned, majority of the Eastern Cape is actually made by rural areas. But we do know that the Department of Education in the past 5-6 years has been working on a program of amalgamating schools, closing down those schools where you find that there are only 16 pupils and maybe 4 in grade 8 and maybe 2 in matric, and merging them with other schools. But that's also been a bit of a challenge. Working also with various departments, they've been building more schools within the rural areas, you know, schools that actually meet the standards of giving over quality education. We do know that the Department of the Eastern Cape has done, you know, very massive movements in terms of addressing the teacher shortage issue that we had. You remember also in the northern areas where we are, the past 2 to 3 years, they had an issue of having teachers that would be able to educate pupils in Afrikaans, but they addressed that issue. We didn't have any protest last year in terms of teacher shortages within Port Elizabeth, and you remember that this is one of the performing districts. And I think, if I remember correctly, from 2016-2017, 18 of the 23 districts actually showed an improvement. So we'll see again if, you know, of the 23 districts that we have in the Eastern Cape, whether there'll be more districts that have actually improved in terms of their results. But I think it gives us an indication when we look at no-fee paying schools that have actually produced more distinctions for the Eastern Cape. It shows us that there's been a huge focus for those rural area schools in terms of assistance when it comes to education. But I think when we talk about, you know, the finer details in terms of what they've done, there's a press conference later on today where our colleague Ubusisiwe Jemsana Mandasha will be there, and maybe she can tell us a bit more in terms of what are the exact programs that they ran throughout these final matric results to ensure that we actually have seen the improvement that we're seeing now.
Iviwe Poti, thank you so much for that. And of course, looking forward to hearing from those learners from the northern areas in Port Elizabeth that have been affected by gangsterism and drug-related issues throughout the year, and looking at how those learners have performed and how they feel that has impacted on where they find themselves at. And of course, also, as she said, there will be further extrapolation of the results. And we did say earlier on, we will be talking also about those who did not perform as well, those who did not pass. And we have Hector the Motivator, and